I'm going to keep this straightforward because that's what you need when you're deciding whether a robotic pool cleaner is worth the space in your garage and the money in your wallet. If you're on the fence about a cordless, wall-climbing unit, you probably worry about a few things. Will it actually get the job done without me having to chase it around the pool? Will the battery last long enough for a full clean? And, most importantly, am I ending up with a gadget that looks good on paper but leaves me scrubbing the corners by hand? I've spent some time digging into how these kinds of cleaners work in real homes, looking at the specs the manufacturer gives, and reading the handful of buyer comments that are out there. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the core problem a pool owner faces. You've got a pool, whether it's an above-ground rectangle or an in-ground oval, and you're trying to keep the water clear while also fitting pool maintenance into a busy schedule. Traditional vacuum heads require you to lug a hose, attach a filter bag, and manually guide the head around the walls. A cordless robot promises to free you from that choreography, but the promise only holds if the machine can truly navigate the pool's geometry and stay powered long enough to finish the cycle. The NIELONGHCY model is built around two motors, one for propulsion, one for the brush roll. In theory, that gives it more torque to climb walls and push through debris. The battery is a 5,200 mAh lithium pack, which the manufacturer says can handle a full-size pool clean in a single charge. In practice, that translates to roughly 90,120 minutes of run time for an average 12-foot by 24-foot pool, assuming you're not constantly fighting heavy leaf fall. If you have a smaller plunge pool, you'll likely see the full charge stretch across 2 or 3 cleaning cycles. What I found most useful to think about is the set and forget moment. After you drop the robot in, you want to be able to walk away and let it do its thing. The unit's control panel is minimal, just a power button, a start/stop toggle, and a battery indicator. There's no need for a remote or a smartphone app, which some users love but others find adds unnecessary complexity. You simply press start, and the robot begins its pattern. For the first 20-30 minutes it follows a random sweep that covers the floor, then it shifts to a wall-hugging mode that uses the dual motors to press against the pool surface and climb the sides. The wall climbing feature is where the dual motor claim actually shows up in real use. On a slick vinyl surface, the robot can stay attached long enough to scrub the waterline without slipping off. Now, who gets the most out of this setup? If you have a modestly sized residential pool that you use a few times a week, and you're comfortable with a hands-off cleaning routine that lasts about an hour and a half, this robot fits nicely. The lack of a hose means you won't have to wrestle with tangled lines, and the cordless nature lets you place it in the pool without worrying about outlet proximity. It's also a decent choice if you have an above-ground pool that uses a liner, because the robot's brush isn't aggressive enough to damage the material, yet it still lifts sand and fine particles that would otherwise settle at the bottom. On the other side of the coin, there are a few scenarios where you might want to look elsewhere. First, if you have a large commercial-grade pool or a deep diving well, the 90-minute battery window may leave you with a half-cleaned surface, forcing you to run a second charge or intervene manually. Second, if your pool is heavily shaded and collects a lot of organic debris, think pine needles, insects, or a lot of algae, the single brush roll can get clogged quickly, and the robot doesn't have a built-in filter cleaning cycle. You'll have to open the debris compartment after each run and shake it out, which adds a small but recurring maintenance step. Finally, if you're hoping for a fully smart home integration, you'll be disappointed. There's no Wi-Fi, no Alexa skill, and no way to schedule cleanings from an app. For tech-savvy owners, that omission feels like a step back compared to some higher-priced competitors that offer remote monitoring. Let's talk about the hidden trade-offs that often surface after the first few weeks. The robot's housing is made from a plastic that feels sturdy enough for everyday use, but it isn't waterproof in the same way a submersible pump is. If you ever leave it in the pool for longer than a day, say you're on vacation, it can develop a mild odor as the internal components sit in stagnant water. A quick rinse and a dry storage spot solve that, but it's a habit you need to adopt. Also, the dual motor design does make the unit a bit heavier than single motor alternatives.